Good morning, everyone. I'm so thrilled that you have joined us for a very exciting conversation, a conversation about which I am personally excited to have. Last Sunday and this Sunday, I wanted to feature the 5 agencies that are physically connected with St. Luke's Church in terms of either our being a place where they are officed and out of which they work, like the Church of the Common Ground, or that were actually birthed at St. Luke's. And when I think of this new phrase that was kind of given me as the campus of miracles, these 7 wonderful acres of St. Luke's, I think of these 5 wonderful agencies. And the beauty about them is that they are connected with people who have struggles, people who are at points in their lives vulnerable, and it connects us to the planet as well, i.e. the park at St. Luke's. So what we're going to do is talk about each of these 3 persons rather autobiographically, let them talk a little bit about who they are, then talk about the mission of their agencies, and then talk about what is breaking news in their wonderful missions vis-a-vis COVID and the future and the growth. So let's begin with my friend Kim Jackson, who is an Episcopal priest, and she also is, well, she'll tell you what she does, but welcome, Kim. Welcome, Dorothea. Welcome, Linda. So glad all 3 of you are with us. And let's start with you, Kim. Could you tell us a little bit about how in the world you wound up being the leader of the Church of the Common Ground?
Yeah, well, good morning, everyone. And thanks, Ed, for having me on. Wow, that could be a long story. So I'll give you the short story. I was as an Episcopal priest this year, and when I was going through the discernment process, the folks asked me, what kind of priest do you want to be? Do you want to be a parish priest, or what do you want to be? And I said to them, well, I'm 25, so I hope I get to be a lot of things with being a priest, but I was really clear that I wanted to do kind of atypical ministry, that I wanted to work outside of parishes, deep commitment to social justice. And so I started as a college chaplain and did a lot of organizing work with students at the AUC Center, out of the Absalom Jones Center. And then I did do some time as a regular parish priest down at All Saints for about 3 years. And now found myself, I was the interim at Common Ground, and now found myself serving a little more long-term at the Church of the Common Ground.
That's wonderful. Where did you grow up, Kim?
I grew up in Cowpens, South Carolina. It's a little small town, Cowpens, just off of 85.
Good deal. Well, welcome to this conversation. And that was a perfect amount of time. I know we could have a 2-hour spiritual autobiography from you. That'd be great. So, Linda, do you mind introducing yourself next?
I'd be happy to. So, hello, I'm Linda Duncan. I am a longtime member of St. Luke's, and about a year ago, I was asked to join the board for the park at St. Luke's, which is just a perfect place for me to be. I'm an architect, and I also do a lot of landscape design. I really didn't know what role I would be serving as a board member for the park, but I was fairly quickly after joining the park asked if I would help with the redesign. And that's perfect for me because the work that I love to do is, whether it is building design or landscape design, the earth, the tie between buildings and people and nature is always foremost in my mind. So that's what I'm doing here as a board member with the park.
Thanks, Linda Duncan. Really, really inspiring to me. I can't wait to dig deeper in what you're going to talk about today. Dorothea, you represent the senior 501c3 of St. Luke's on campus, TAC, Training and Counseling Center. Please tell us how you got to be where you are before we get into the mission of your organization. Who are you?
Thank you so much. I am originally from Germany, and I came 27 years ago to Atlanta to become a chaplain. That was my dream. And from there, I became a chaplain, and then I worked in a parish as a pastor in Germany for 3 years, got ordained, and then I came back, right back. And my dream was to be educator of chaplains. That was the next step of my dream. And so I came back in 1997. And since then, I've been in Atlanta, and I've been training chaplains ever since. And also, I've become the pastor of the German church here in Atlanta. So I'm pastoring on weekends for part-time. And also, I became a marriage and family therapist about, I think, the last 4 years. I've been in training for 10 years, but I'm also a therapist. And so when I started with TAG 6 years ago, it just combined everything. My love for pastoring, my love for educating chaplains, and my therapeutic training. That was ideal too. And I'm excited. It's my dream job.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Dorothea, you actually preach every Sunday in your church, which is German speaking, right?
That's right. That's correct.
So you have a full-time job and then a full-souled additional job.
That's right.
Really very unusual. And I just have to put on the table my emotional, heart beating fast feelings toward you and TAC, because when I was in training as a kid at St. Luke's, my supervising priest was Palmer Temple,
Wow.
who is one of your predecessors several back. And
Yes.
And TAC then was just a hallway, a hall of offices. And for you to have that wonderful, well, let's get into the mission right now. While your motor's running, can you talk a little bit about the mission of TAC, Dorothea?
Yes, we have a twofold mission. One is to educate the next generation of spiritual leaders in spiritual care and pastoral care. And we have been sending theologians that were, most of them in training, some of them already are finished, into the community to encounter persons who experience homelessness, mental illness, poverty, all of those things, and to learn about themselves, first of all, and to provide care, spiritual, emotional care to persons who are very different usually from what our theologians have experienced before. And then the other part of our mission is to provide mental health care to anybody who needs it. So we are able to, with donations of St. Luke's members, but also the community, provide care, spiritual mental health care to persons who come from all walks of life to seek out counseling that couldn't afford having counseling otherwise. We have 10 licensed counselors who make that part of the vision a reality. And
your staff is how many members?
We have 10 counselors that provide the mental health care, and then we have right now Karen Miller, she's the director of CPE, and we have an administrator for CPE, Clinical Pastor Education at CPE. And then we are contracting with Wellstar Hospital right now, and they have some educators in training that we are also training, and they are now beginning to have their own students. So we have been growing exponentially the last 3-4 years by collaborating with partners in the community.
And then I just want to connect also. I went through clinical pastoral education when I was on staff, just before and after on staff at St. Luke's. And I did my clinical pastoral education at Grady Hospital.
That's right.
And TAC has now an official relationship with the CPE organization or process at Grady, right?
We did last year. We actually helped them. They came to us and said, we want to become independent. They're the oldest CPE program in town. And they said, we want to become our own center. Can you help us? So TAC was actually midwifing them to become their own center. So as of January 1st, Grady has become its own CPE center thanks to TAC, helping them be affiliated with them and help them along so that they can become independent. So that was an exciting, adventurous thing to do.
Oh, wonderful. So Kim, let's talk about Church of Common Ground and the mission. How did Church of the Common Ground happen to be? And if you don't mind, we need to emphasize that this is a ministry not of St. Luke's, but of the diocese. It is a ministry of St. Luke's, as St. Luke's is a member of the diocese. But how did it come to be, and what do you do? What's the mission?
Yeah, so Common Ground has been around for over a decade now. It first came to be because of the vision of a few folks who saw that there was a need. And for those who don't know, Church of the Common Ground is a church without walls. So my office has walls at St. Luke's, but the church itself is without walls. And there were some models already in existence before. And so some people, a few priests actually came along and said, we need to do this for our community. And it's actually interesting. A lot of that ministry work actually began just outside of the doors of St. Luke's over at Peachtree and Pine. That was where kind of they first got started, was doing services out at Peachtree and Pine before we moved down to Woodruff Park. But the mission of the Church of the Common Ground is to be a church, to be a spiritual home for those who have no physical home. And so about 90% of my congregants are unhoused, are unsheltered, and most of them are sleeping on the streets tonight. When we go to bed, many of my folks will go to bed on a street or under a bridge. So we seek to be a spiritual home, and we are a church like St. Luke's is. When you get sick, you call your pastoral care for pastoral care, and we provide that. When you need to be baptized or confirmed or just have a conversation about who God is in your life and where God is, that's what we do, and that's who we seek to be.
And Kim, there's a weekly Eucharist, right? Every Sunday?
Well, there was until COVID-19. That's right. So on Sundays at 1 o'clock in the park, we have a full service when there's not a pandemic going on. And if you come, it will feel in some ways has the same rhythms of any other Episcopal church. Obviously, there's some significant differences in that we are outside and our congregants are extremely involved in the service. But the liturgy itself will feel familiar to a lot of people.
And stay with us just a second while we're talking about mission and daily work. I'm so intrigued and inspired by foot care. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Common Ground has a foot clinic that we call Common Souls. And during the wintertime, we meet in Gateway, which is a shelter and a facility and organization that provides a lot of services to people experiencing homelessness. And then in the summer times, we actually meet in the park, the St. Luke's Park. But for folks who are unsheltered, they spend a lot of time on their feet. And particularly, if it's raining outside, their feet may stay wet for days because their shoes are wet. And so there's a lot of need for foot care. And every Tuesday, that's what we do. It's a group of volunteers. About half of those of us who volunteer at the foot clinic are currently sheltered, and the other half are people who have experienced homelessness or are currently experiencing homelessness. And so it's a really beautiful collaborative effort where we gather together, and non-medical clinics, so we don't diagnose, we don't do treatment like that, but we care for people's feet and their souls, their spiritual souls at the same time. I think it's one of the most beautiful and hands-on and intimate experiences that we share with one another each week.
It's been so important to me to, prior to the pandemic, and of course we will return to this as we are able to gather again, that there are people who are connected with the Church of the Common Ground who feel a calling to be there on Tuesdays to help care for other person's feet. And that whole notion of Jesus calling us to wash one another's feet. I mean, I just get choked up by it. Isn't that amazing?
It is, I mean, it is literally what Jesus modeled for us, was to wash the feet of his friends and of strangers as well. And so it's a great blessing. It is incredibly intimate, and a lot of people aren't comfortable with it. So we've actually created, there are lots of other ways for people to be involved with the foot clinic that don't require them to actually engage with the foot washing process itself. But I found that my volunteers who do it, and those of us who care for people's feet, come away changed. We come away different as a result of that encounter. And I think that in fact is why Jesus offered that as a model.
Yeah. And before we leave you and go to Linda, because it was a great segue about the park at St. Luke's just a minute ago. But before we shift to the park, I do want you to talk about the team. How many people are on the Church of the Common Ground team? And then also I see and get to be introduced and connect with, from time to time, cohorts of interns. So can you talk about both of those dimensions?
That's right. So we've been blessed to have a TAC intern with us every time there's been a TAC group prior to COVID-19. So there's always been someone TAC. We also have a partnership with Candler School of Theology and with Columbia School of Theology. So we typically have 2-year-long interns from there. And then on our staff, we have an administrator who's there with us part-time. And I have a ministry coordinator whose name is Jakivia, and she actually came from Candler. She was a student who loved the work, and we went ahead and hired her. And we have a deacon who is with us every Sunday, Deacon David Oss. Now that we're at COVID-19, our team is much, much smaller. It's just Deacon David Oss and I that go out to be with the people. We wanted to limit the possibility of exposure. And so it's just Deacon David Oss and I who are on the team. One last thing I want to add, though, we are able to do our work only because of the donation contributions of churches like St. Luke's. So we serve lunch every Sunday, COVID or not, and those lunches come from churches. They come from people of goodwill who pack those lunches. They Instacart it. I don't know how it happens, but I get 100 lunches every Sunday delivered to the parking lot of St. Luke's. And so I consider each one of those persons on my team as well.
Oh, glory. And then who is this Bruce Gunter guy? What does he do?
Yeah, Bruce was our interim director, and he also happens to be on the vestry at St. Luke's. I think you guys know him well. He's now the board chair. I think he actually always was the board chair before he took that interim director's position. But Bruce has been a huge advocate for us and does a lot of the work of kind of thinking about the larger system of people who are experiencing homelessness. So he's done a great job about helping us coordinate with other ministries, other organizations that are serving people in similar spaces. So yes, I'm sure Bruce will be watching today. I apologize for leaving you out of that list earlier, and thanks for reminding me, Ed. But Bruce has been absolutely amazing. When we were in a season of transition, he really held down and was a steady presence on behalf of the organization as we move forward.
Great. So Linda, let's talk about all of the species who are in the planetary family, many of whom are threatened and marginalized also. So talk a little bit about the park, how it came to be, what its mission is, and then in the last part of our conversation, all three of you will be talking about the future, and you're really playing a big role in that. But right now, just focus on the present and what the park is all about, please.
Okay, so the park began in 1991, and it was for the most part, it was leftover property once the I-85-75 connector was built. So there was this parcel of leftover property that the DOT owned, and they surrounded by a chain link fence and maybe did some weed control, but it was not very attractive. And there's also some of the park land is owned by the city of Atlanta, where the street used to come through and connect over to Peachtree. So in 1991, members of St. Luke's decided to approach the DOT, the city of Atlanta, and see if we could get an agreement to create a park of this property. And the park is meant for all people. It's for our parishioners, of course. It's for members of, the community, people who work, live in the community, those who are fortunate to have homes, those who are not so fortunate and are spending the night on the street. And as you've just heard, many activities take place in the park that are helping the homeless. And those are things that are very important to us. And so the park was designed and planted around 1991. The land was used during the Olympics for activities there. They actually took up a lot of the planting and then replanted it. So things that you see today have been there really since 1996. Our mission is that we have a refuge for people in the city in an area that otherwise is sort of a concrete jungle. We really don't have much greenery in that part of the city other than the St. Luke's property itself and the adjacent park. And so it's very important to us to maintain that, both for human beings, but also for our animal species. And as we will talk about that with the work that we have coming up, that focus on wildlife and animal species, both to give them a home, but also for all of us humans who are enjoying the park, we can enjoy watching birds, butterflies, bees. That will make it all the more special to us, I believe.
So before we get into the future, and you're central to the design of the future, let's just note the beauty of the trees that are there.
Absolutely.
Some of the most gorgeous trees. I'm a person who's weird enough to talk with trees and think that they're talking back to me. Mm-hmm. And I oftentimes pray to God through my relationship with trees. So trees are, I keep trees around me all the time, obviously. And, but also there's a pollinator garden and there's also a vegetable garden. Can you talk about those gardens, please?
So the vegetable garden, I'm not sure when it began. I'm not really part of that, but the vegetables are grown. They're planted twice a year by members of St. Luke's and are used by Crossroads, I believe.
That's right.
The Crossroads. And so again, I'm getting into the future of the park, but we're adjacent to the St. Luke's property. We're adjacent to those things that you talk about, the pollinator garden. And so we want to tie into that very closely and enhance all of that. I think that we have a great opportunity with the park to have even stronger relationships with Crossroads, with Church of the Common Ground, to reach out to one another and say, these are our plans, and how will that work for you? Are there things that we can provide to you that will make your lives easier? But I think what you're getting at too is that we do have a pollinator garden that was planted this last year. It's quite small, but it's effective. And so as the park expands, as the planting expands, we plan to really go all out with those pollinator type plants absolutely everywhere. Because what that is doing, we've got, as I think most people hear fairly frequently, we have real issues with our bee populations, our bee pollinators, which we need to pollinate. Not only are they a part of this earth that's important, but also they happen to pollinate many of our trees and our crops. And our birds we're losing a lot of our bird species. And so the more that we can plant native plants that are helpful, useful to these creatures, the more that we can help in their survival during this difficult time of human expansion.
Perfect. So I'm going to come back to you to ask you to enlarge all of that. But I do want to note that today is Memorial Day weekend, and that means it's Mass on the Grass Sunday. And because of COVID, we're not having Mass on the Grass today. We are meeting in the church. We're having service in church. And the Mass on the Grass has been such an important part of my short tenure so far, just to be able to worship outside, which Kim leads every Sunday in non-COVID times. And it's been a great place to have what I call dinner on the ground with Clyde's Kitchen, fried chicken, gospel birds, and everything else that comes. But enough of that. Let's go to the future. So Dorothea, you have just done amazing adaptive work. I mean, you're supposed to go and talk to somebody face to face when you get therapy, when you get counseling.
Yeah.
We're doing everything online. So tell us about the changes at TAC.
Yeah, we've been around 44 years. And as you said, it started out in the basement of St. Luke's. And then in '93, we inherited that beautiful house, the gay house that St. Luke's actually renovated for TAC to move in there. And when our clients come, they just love the sanctuary that that building provides. It's so beautiful. And we really grieved the moment that COVID-19 came along. We were like, oh my God, who are we without that building? Because that building has a lot of hospitality and warmth, and half of the healing that happens, we thought, and we still think, happens in that building. So also, we've been around, and we believe in the one-on-one encounter, and we believe in healing happen through relationships. So we had to think on our feet, and very quickly, because we are passionate about not interrupting relationships with those that we care for. We have about 1,200 encounters every year with persons who need mental health services from us. So within a week, we were up and running virtually. So I like to call it symbolic. Virtually sounds so technological, but if you used to do it 3-dimensional, and then now we're doing the care 2-dimensional. And I like to call it symbolic. And all our 10 counselors, as we have right now, are working from home right now, create an atmosphere that hopefully is also providing a home atmosphere for our clients. And many clients have come with us on that video ability to see each other and to take care of each other. We also grieved a lot. Common Ground was one of our placement sites, and our students had to be interrupted this spring. We were able to finish the unit, but there's a lot of grief right now that the 6 sites that we usually serve right now cannot protect our students enough to have the services. So we were fortunate that Wellstar Hospital, that has 11 hospitals, and our partners of ours, allowed us to actually serve COVID-19 patients and families virtually. So we also moved our education, the CPE program, into a virtual symbolic way of serving spiritual care. So we will have 22 students this summer, which is usually we have 6. But now we have such a need for getting the training, and we have such a need in the hospitals for spiritual care that we are trying something very innovative. They have purchased 400 iPads in the hospitals, and our students will be at home, and they will have iPads available to contact family members at home that cannot be with their loved ones. We will have telephone abilities into the rooms of patients. And there's a program called Nobody Die Alone, which is a program where when families cannot be with their loved ones because of the virus, we will able to bring the iPads into the room, and then the chaplain will be present as a person is in this very, very difficult phase of their life, but they can still hear the voices of the people that they love, and not just the machines, and not just strangers that they don't know. So that's a a huge new way of serving the community until we can get back to our usual partners. But I'm very, very grateful and excited about having moved both programs into the symbolic realm of doing everything online and keeping everybody safe.
Dorothea, kudos
Thank
to
you.
you for your leadership. It is so flexible, visionary, dynamic, and adaptive. My God, for you not to let this stop.
We couldn't. We had to continue, because the education, the spiritual care of people, and the mental care really depended on it. And I'm very grateful to my team. I have 5 staff members that do the administrative piece, the directive piece. I could not do this by myself. And I'm not an IT person, so I don't know how we are doing it, but thanks to other people that help us out, make this possible. And the donations, we had to upgrade our computers, we had to get equipment. So all of that costs money, and we're so appreciative for anybody who supports our mission, so that tech, that's 44 years old, can actually move into this new age. It's a new era. And I'm grateful, that St. Luke's has been there all along and continues to support us even in this new challenge.
And you've got a great website, so people can go there for more information.
Yeah, we just got a new website as well. So everything is on there. It's trainingandcounselingcenter.org.
Training and Counseling Center. Kim Jackson, you're a leader. My God, a visionary leader you are. Talk a little bit about what you see in the future of the Church of the Common Ground, please.
Yeah, so we are actively preparing for reopening. So when COVID-19 happened, the bishop rightfully asked us to limit our programming, and through gracious donations of others, we had materials that were available. So we had socks from our foot clinic that we're just going to sit on the shelves in St. Luke's, and we had some hygiene kits as well. And I made the decision to not just keep those waiting until we were able, but we gave all of those away to agencies like Gateway that were continuing to provide services. And so now we're in the process of hoping for a new future, and we're restocking in anticipation of reopening a foot clinic when it is safe to do so. Part of that means that we are stocking up on PPEs as they become available. Of course, healthcare frontline workers, we'll get them first, but we want to make sure that our volunteers will have the PPEs that they need. And then also we've been asking and receiving donations of masks, both homemade masks and those that have been made in factories. And so we give them out every Sunday, and our parishioners are able to make use of those. And we will keep some. I think most everyone now is prepared for the possibility that November or December will bring another wave of COVID-19. And what I'm deeply committed to is making sure that on day one, our parishioners, those of our friends who are living on the streets, have masks immediately. We don't need to have a delay. So we want to have those prepared and ready for them. But also we are dreaming, of a future where Common Ground can really take an active role in being a leader, a place where true advocacy work can take place for people who are living on the streets. So I have a deep commitment to making sure, in the same way that our foot clinic is half people who are unsheltered and half people who are sheltered who run that. I think that having people who are experiencing homelessness be the voice for themselves is really essential. And so as we kind of look out into the future, we're really planning for some advocacy work where Common Ground parishioners can tell their own stories, and where they can be, when the city of Atlanta wants to make some decisions about how to take care of homelessness in the city, I want Church of the Common Ground be the place where they come to, where they talk to our parishioners who have learned some. We're anticipating doing some studies around policy issues that impact and have created these issues, so that our parishioners can really speak up and speak for themselves. And so I'm actually going to look to St. Luke's and to many of the leaders in St. Luke's Church to help us to do that, to build capacity there, to get us in front of the right people. But you know, the parishioners that we have at Church of the Common Ground, they are smart and they are thoughtful and they know what the experience is more than anyone else. And so that is one of the things that I am envisioning as I kind of think about how do we address this on a systemic level. You know, Church of the Common Luke's, I think you guys started an advocacy committee because you understand that part of what it means to be people of faith is to be involved in the public square. And so right before COVID-19 happened, we took a group of parishioners from Common Ground over to the Capitol to meet their legislators so that they can engage. And so we're going to ramp that up and continue that work as soon as it's safe to do so, so that the folks who are experiencing homelessness can actually get policies implemented that matter to them.
Kim, I want to highlight the fact that you have been using the word parishioners to refer to sisters and brothers in the human family who experience homelessness. And oftentimes we are so dismissive of quote unquote the homeless rather than persons who are experiencing homelessness. And not only that, but you're referring to them as parishioners. These are people who worship. And I am so impressed with that. And not only that, but you're also referring to them, you didn't use the word citizens, but they are citizens who really need to take their role in the development of the health of democracy in our country. So I want to thank you for that. And one other thing, and then I need to go to Linda and wrap it up. How do people get in touch with the Church of the Common Ground for mask donations, for volunteering, for whatever?
Sure. So please feel free to email us. I'm gonna go ahead and put Bruce's email address out there. He's a little more able to respond a little more quickly. So it's vicar@churchofthecommonground.org. Feel free to email us there. Bruce or I or both of us will respond. Again, that's vicar, VICAR, at churchofthecommonground.org. Our website is the same. It's churchofthecommonground.org. There's information there as well about doing, how to sign up. I am thankful. I am so thankful and grateful to be able to announce that all of our Sundays through the summer are all full. Churches have stepped up in wonderful ways, and we asked for an increase in lunches because there was an increase in need, and people stepped up immediately and provided for that. Thank you all so much for being a part of that. And you know, if you happen to be online and you see some socks that are on sale, go ahead and send those over to St. Luke's care of St. Luke's, the Church of the Common Ground. We are ready to stock up and to be able to continue the work that we've been called to do, the programming. What we do it in a new way right now, but we do look forward to returning to some old ways when it's safe to do so.
Yeah, I also want to emphasize that. I was at the church Tuesday doing some work by myself, and we have a receptionist there, Valerie Freer, and I was asking her if she just bored, and all of these volunteers are bringing by food for Church of the Common Ground, for Crossroads, and then of course repair people are coming in. So we're closed for business, but we're not closed for doing good. So please, if you need to drop or send something to St. Luke's, do so. Linda, we've got to go to you before we want to. You are a designer, and you've got great designs coming up. I want to hear a lot about this pollination, this everything that you're doing.
So yes, we've undertaken a new master plan for the park, and we decided that well, let me give you a little history first. I think it would be important to do that. So the Park at St. Luke is also a 501(c)(3). So the money that we have to maintain the park is completely based on donations, primarily from St. Luke's members, but also we've really been reaching out to the surrounding community, people who live in the neighborhoods particularly, to talk to them about the things that we're about to do with the park. And they've been so excited about it that they've been sending contributions. Recently, we applied for a grant from the Cherokee Garden Club Community Fund and were awarded a grant to help us with our planting. But as I mentioned before, the park was first planted in 1991. And so the money that we have on the board is used to cut the grass, to maintain the light fixtures, to maintain the sprinkler fixtures. A big part of it, honestly, is to pick up garbage. These meals that are brought in every weekend and such create a lot of garbage, and it costs money to remove that. So those are some of the things that our money goes towards. But also, we put out a lot of pine straw every year. And so as a board member, when we were going through the budget and I heard the budget for the pine straw, I thought, that is just silly. We could replace that pine straw, which isn't doing a whole lot of good, with ground covers. The ground covers are there. They keep growing. They serve the same purpose in that they do weed control and maintain moisture for our tree collection. And so the other thing is that we had a problem in the park with some of the security issues. We had some criminal activity that we were not very happy with. So again, we need security in the park. And we, along with all of these other groups you've been talking to, share in the cost of the security. But the police asked us to remove a lot of the shrubbery, which was blocking their visibility into the park. And so in the last year, we undertook that activity and of removing the shrubbery. And so now we've covered it up with pine straw. It looks great. But we would really like to replant. We're not changing the trees at all because they are wonderful. As the trees die or have disease and we need to take them out, we will be replacing them with only native trees. And all of the ground covers and the perennials we'll be planting are going to be native. Everything's native. And the reason for that is, again, to promote that wildlife, wildlife habitat. Homes for particularly pollinators, for butterflies, for birds, any kind of wildlife. And to have a nice balance in the park, we'll be adding more flowering plants, things that bloom throughout the year, but also can maintain be maintained in the activity of the park. And so they're natives, they're things that butterflies need, but also they attract us, human beings, to use the park. So we feel like the more people who are attracted to the park and wish to use it, the better the balance will be for our park community. That will be attractive to those who work and live in the neighborhood, as well as those who don't have another home, and that is their green oasis where they can spend some quiet time. It's incredibly important for our homeless population to have such a place to, get away from the concrete where they may be sleeping and instead sit on a bench and enjoy being under the trees and having that shade. And so we're really just trying to provide a much nicer, healthier habitat for both our wildlife and our human visitors.
Beautiful.
And thank you.
Did I interrupt? Did I stop you?
No. That's
Okay.
all.
Well, I'm looking at the clock and we need to stop. Our time is up. But Kim Jackson, Dorothea, Lotze-Kola, Linda Duncan, this has been, you each are so inspiring, and you are inspiring and growing these amazing ministries on behalf of all of St. Luke's and all of the friends of St. Luke's. Thank you very much for your leadership. You are making the world a better place, and we are very, 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 very happy. If anybody wants to make a contribution, Linda, how do people make a contribution to the park? Is there a website?
We have a website. Yes, we do. The park at
So we have websites for all three: the Park at St. Luke's, the Church of the Common Ground, and the Training and Counseling Center, TAC. Please visit us. Please give us money. Please give us your prayers and encouragement and energy, and we are all working together to make the world a better place. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Have a great Sunday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 Thank you.